Simon Bridges.
Mr. Speaker, Damien O'Connor asks, what about the people? And I say to Damien O'Connor, look, 99.9% of the bills that come to this House are all about the people. Arguably, this one is as well in some ways, and I may get to that. But I want to be very clear to the member that we're not in a general debate right now where we're going to do point scoring. Actually, I came to this House to talk about the Animal Welfare Amendment Act and animal welfare, and that's what I'm going to do. And Mr. Speaker, the latest contemporary research continues to confirm that animals are much smarter than we give them credit for. They are much more like us, actually, than we've historically thought. I've heard someone say much smarter than Damien O'Connor. That would be cruel. But there are differences between humans and animals. Animals haven't devised as many ways as humans to be cruel and inhumane. And in the first reading, I went through the last year's SPCA list of shame, 50 of the worst cases of animal cruelty we've seen in this country, and I'm not going to do it again. The range of sickening, blood-curdling acts are abhorrent to us, but it does make one wonder who really are or who deserves the title of animals sometimes. And the short point is this, Mr. Speaker: humans can be cruel and sadistic, and this bill addresses that in relation to animals and does get tough in relation to animal cruelty. I want to just briefly this afternoon do a couple of things. Firstly, recount the passage of this legislation, and then summarise the law as it will be very briefly. But the passage of this is worth telling. In only a few months, we in this Parliament, with the support of the SPCA and other animal lovers, have made some pretty big changes to animal cruelty law. And I know some, Sue Kedgley arguably amongst them, will argue that we should do more, and that's a legitimate debate to have. But I don't think anyone could argue in this House that we haven't nevertheless taken justice for animals much further in this bill than we have previously. And so, as some members may know, I was approached by an SPCA Auckland board member. Other SPCA members have also came and talked to me about reform. And it became very clear to me quickly that change was required, because despite the frequency of heinous acts towards animals in this country, before this bill, less than 3% of prosecutions resulted in imprisonment. The most common penalty was a fine. And indeed, at the time that this bill came to this House, actually, we may have seen something of a change already with publicity surrounding this bill, but at the time this bill came to this House, only 10 people ever, or I should say less than 10 people ever, had been to, fewer, thank you, than 10 people ever had gone to prison for animal welfare offending. I, throughout much of this, have liaised with the Minister of Agriculture, David Carter, and I want to thank him and acknowledge him taking this on and substantially improving and widening this bill. It being a government bill has made it an absolute priority bill, and we will, by the end of today, as I say, Mr. Speaker, have done something very strong and positive for animals and animal cruelty in this country. Turning to the law, we're not simply getting a law that lifts the maximum penalty for the willful ill treatment of animals from 3 to 5 years, as my member's bill would have. That would have been a good start, would have made some difference, and would have achieved my goal of raising public awareness and sending a message. But we are, with this bill, getting much, much more thanks to the Minister of Agriculture and the Prime Minister and ultimately everyone in this Parliament. We are getting a substantially strengthened law that simplifies and rationalises offences, increases offence penalties across the board, and does more to protect the welfare of animals. There was, if I'm frank, the possibility that my member's bill would have had more symbolic than real effect. Our government bill will certainly do more than that, improving the law across the board. As I say, I take the view that this bill is, in some respects, historic. We have all 123 members of this Parliament, 122 is it, with different backgrounds and very different. It's hard to give a serious speech with some of these members across the other side of the House. But members with different views, different approaches, 122 MPs, whether Green or ACT, voting for this bill. In other words, Mr. Speaker, the entire Parliament of New Zealand coming together on this and reaching a consensus against animal cruelty. So in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, this year the government is doing something great for animals and against animal cruelty, and I commend this bill to the House.
Ko Moana Maki.
Thank you.